Great episode in store today, as we've got a collector of some trading cards in a very unique situation from my favorite team. It's coming up in just a moment is the 304 Collector's Corner, and he's got some great football cards to share with you and I in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And we have a really interesting episode for you tonight. We're going to go into our collector's corner here, and literally and figuratively, because we have a gentleman that I became aware of recently on social media that has a spot called 304 Collector's Corner, and he had some interesting things on the Pittsburgh Steelers, which piques my interest, and we're going to let him tell his story a little bit. His name is Ryan Minnigh, and he joins us tonight. Ryan, welcome to the Pig Pen.
Thank you, Darren. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on and letting me tell this story. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, Ryan. So why don't you first tell us a little bit about how you're decked in Steelers gear, you're putting things on social media about Steelers history. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in that?
Yeah, so I grew up in West Virginia. So in my area, we kind of had a choice of who we were going to be fans of. My family, my dad was a Steelers fan, so that was kind of where I ended up being a fan of. Now, when it comes to cards, that was just something that always made sense to me. That was something that I enjoyed. It kind of made the game real, something that you could have. But this project specifically, 304 Collector Corner, was built out of pandemic boredom. So that was kind of me saying, oh, I'm going to put it all out on social media. But now the focus of this collection has been the Steelers rookie cards. And a lot of that came into focus in the last 5 years or so since COVID as well. Now, like we were talking about, I actually started this when I was much younger. In high school, I made a list of the top 100 Steelers. I said, I can't do that. It's going to be changing. It changes every single year. So then I found a list of 500 Steelers. That changes. And then I said, I'm just going to do everybody. We're going to tell every single Steeler story in franchise history. We're going to collect everybody that we can. So I went on a journey to not only make an all-time roster, but kind of back into that and go on Trading Card Database and Beckett.com and make a full list of everybody with cards. So to date, we have 1,118 Steelers represented and only 46 with cards missing. Now there's over 1,600 guys in team history, so about 500 or so don't have cards, but we'll honor them a different way.
Yeah, so some of them might be back when they were the Pittsburgh Pirates, and maybe they didn't have cards like we know today. So
Oh yeah,
interesting. That is quite a colossal project you have going here. Now, what is the meaning of 304? Is that something special?
So 304 is West Virginia's area code. It's actually the area code of the entire state. So West Virginians are very proud to be West Virginians. So I'm happy to be a West Virginian, but I like telling the story of the 412 a little bit better. That's where my passion is.
Okay. Yeah, that's but for folks that are out of the area, I'm in Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, so I understand the relationship. But Morgantown is is where, of course, where the Mountaineers play, the West Virginia Mountaineers play, and they are very well covered in the Pittsburgh area, just like Pitt is and Penn State, and it's a local team because it's not that far, even though it's in over a state border, it's still very close. And actually, I think Morgantown is closer than where I live in Erie to Pittsburgh, downtown Pittsburgh. So it's a very familiar place, and it's very common to have Steeler fans down in West Virginia, especially that area in Morgantown. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of these players that you put in? Maybe you can pick a few of them and tell us a little bit about these players and preserve their history.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of say this project even starts before the Steelers a little bit. So when I originally started it, like I mentioned, I said I want to do every Steeler, but then I realized that professional football itself was very much rooted in Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh specifically. So I started my project with guys like Pudge Heffelfinger, Dave Barry, who was involved with the Latrobe teams and the Stars. I even picked up a Christy Matheson because he played for the Pittsburgh Stars as well.
Hmm.
But I really wanted to focus on the Steelers. And the years that intrigued me the most, if I'm being completely honest, is 1933 through 1969. Just because those are the years that a lot of these guys, I don't want to say are forgotten, but are routinely kind of glossed over in team history. A lot of times I say team history starts in the 70s for a lot of folks. But a lot of these guys pre 1970 have great stories as well. I actually have a couple cards sitting here with me. I'll grab this and see if I can get it on camera. This is one of my favorites. I'll get it up there as close as I can. So that is Armand Nikolai. So for those who may not be familiar, Nikolai was a tackle and a kicker, very common for the 1930s. He played from 1934 through 1942, led the Steelers 4 times in scoring, retired with top 10 in field goals made in NFL history, and remained in the top 5 in scoring for the Pittsburgh Steelers until the 1960s. So this is a guy who very much made a legacy in Pittsburgh and was a very early star of the team, but we just don't talk about that era that much, right? So
Hmm.
it's unfortunate that we kind of miss some of these guys like Nikolai. And part of my mission is to help tell guys like this story so we can bring a little bit more awareness to them and hopefully one day put them in the Steelers Hall of Honor.
Yeah, definitely a great project. That's great, great that you're representing him. Now I have to ask you a question because I have a book that is you're talking about Mathewson and the
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh Stars, and I wrote a book about the team that sort of dismantled the original National Football League that the Pittsburgh Stars and the Philadelphia Athletics and Phillies played in. Uh, and so many, then what they did is they robbed the original National Football League to put together the Franklin, Pennsylvania team that I wrote about. So you said you'd have cards from that era besides Matheson and
So some
okay.
there's not a lot that exists from that era, as you can imagine. For instance, like even Pudge Heffelfinger, his rookie card, if you will, is a 1955 Topps All American. So a lot of times these guys are honored in cardboard form much later than when they played. Now,
Of
I'll never
course.
claim that my research is perfect and that some of these guys have cards and I just haven't found them. But that's kind of part of the mission too. We're just going to keep going and seeing what we can find and what connections we can make. And we'll find as many guys as we can tied to Pittsburgh sports history.
Yeah, so yeah, if you happen to see any of those, I'd be definitely interested in talking about those, like the Jack Haydens or Blondie Wallaces or
Hmm.
guys from that 1903 team of Franklin. So yeah, definitely. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's go back into the Steelers.
No, we could talk about the 1890s and the 1900s all day. I get that. Um, so I'll pull up another one here. So another part of this, which I'm sure a lot of fans of your show that are, football history folks know about teams like the Steagles and Card Pit whenever the Steelers had to combine teams during wartime. So this is one of the harder cards to find. Now I have it in a sleeve here. I'll try to get it up there close again. So Hall of Fame receiver Bill Hewitt was a
Hmm.
member of the Steagles in 1943. So I was interested to know that he is technically part of Steelers history. So he played for Chicago, came to the Eagles in the late 1930s, and was kind of pulled out of retirement to play for the Steagles. And I was like, how come no one ever told me that Bill Hewitt was a member of the Steagles? That just is as like a missed part of his story, in my opinion. So it's fun to kind of make those early connections of these guys and see where everybody lines up in team history. Whether it be a guy like Hewitt who played one season, or guys who played one game in those early eras too.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, very very cool. Yeah, the whole Steagles and the card pits or the carpets, as many people call them, because they got walked on so much. That's an interesting era all itself too. But it's great you can bring in some of these Eagles and Cardinals players too. That they're technically they were on the team. They were representing Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. Well, and that kind of even goes into the point of guys like Al Wistert and Bucko Kilroy, guys who are on the senior Hall of Fame ballots, and I'm like, let's get these guys in because we can kind of claim, we can claim them as Steelers in a way. I know that Eagles fans might not feel the same way, but we can be happy for them as a member of the Steagles.
Right, and most definitely, even though they were very poor teams, both of those combined teams during the war, but
It happens.
yeah, it does, it does. So, what else you got?
So, one story I'll tell you here, which I think is kind of funny, which is one of the kind of the starting points of this entire collection. Two guys that I think everybody's going to know very well. Here, I got to organize them here. So, two of the most recognized names in franchise history, of course, Terry Bradshaw's 1971 tops, a little bit of a glare on it, and Franco Harris's rookie from 1973 tops. So I actually got these together, and I want to I want to give credit to my mom for this because she actually knows how to motivate me to get things. So when I was in high school, actually, I was putting together that early kind of top 100 Steelers rookie cards, and those were the two biggest needs. High school kids may not be able to afford something like a Terry Bradshaw rookie. So she said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. If you get a certain score on your ACT, you got a card waiting for you. I got that certain score, and 15, almost 20 years later now, I have that card still. And she always said, she's like, the best investment I made was $100 card because it got you more in scholarship money. And I'm like,
Nice.
you definitely beat the system on that one. But I always like those because I got them together with that same story. So it just a fun little way to pick up cards, and you never know how you're going to find and kind of stumble across people with these cards.
Yeah, it makes me sick because I was buying those packs of cards brand new, and probably friends and my brothers and stuff were sticking them in their spokes of their bike and make the clickety clacks.
I know it. I've heard so many stories, and I'm sure you have too, where it's like my mom threw all my cards away because she thought they were worthless, or I left them at the house and she just tossed them. I'm like, man, those are the people that I want to go back and look through their collections because they might have had stuff they don't even know about.
Well, my collection, my grandsons have them, took them. I didn't really, they were having such a great time. I'm like, hey, just go ahead and play with them. I probably crazy doing that too,
Uh,
uh, but I sat there and I say that about Bradshaw because maybe you're not aware of this, but Bradshaw really wasn't that popular to
mm,
even after the first Super Bowl. There was many times he was booed. I mean, people were asking, wanting Mike Krujek to come in. And I happened to be at the game where Terry Bradshaw got dumped by Turkey Jones in Cleveland
mm,
Stadium, and was out for. And then Krujek came in and took him into the playoffs. They still had so much talent, but it wasn't the same without Bradshaw. And then by the time he's later in his career, or won him, but there was a time when there was Terry Hanratty, who's a '69 draftee or '68. He was a year before Bradshaw, I believe, second round pick.
mm-hmm.
And Bradshaw's in there, Joe Gilliam's in there, and they're each starting like 3 or 4 games that season. Chuck Noll wouldn't settle on a starter. So Steelers fans, don't fret. The last few years, we don't have we have multiple starters during the year. Don't worry, it happened back in the early '70s too, and they won a Super Bowl shortly after.
Yeah, well, and I remember that story coming into this year, of course, the Justin Fields and Russell Wilson debate, and people were like, "This is unprecedented. It's never happened." And people were like, "Joe Gilliam and Terry Bradshaw are literally the example of this from the same team's history."
And Hanratty started a few
Yeah,
games that year too, so he was no slouch.
it all works out. But I have a couple more cards I'll kind of pull over here for you, and a couple other stories to go with them. So another one that's very historical, very well known in the collecting community. I'm sure you know of. So this is the 1935 National Chico set, and this is running back Warren Heller. So Warren Heller is another one of those names that, of course, we may not know as well. But Warren Heller played for the Steelers for 3 years. He was a Pitt grad, and whenever he played, he led the team in rushing all 3 years, and actually led the team in rushing historically all time until Bill Dudley broke his record in 46, coming back from the war. So, again, stories like Warren Heller and Nick Nicolai. Unfortunately, guys like Bill Sordet don't have cards, but just those early names that I think deserve more credit, a little bit more notoriety. Those are the guys that I'm kind of after, and I want to tell their stories. The Val Jansantes, the Jerry Shipkes of the 50s and 40s. Those guys just deserve a little bit more recognition than they get historically.
Absolutely. When you can sport the Bumblebee uniform like he is in that image, that's a great image. Yeah. So are you pro Bumblebee uniform or against it?
Okay, so I would say when I was younger, I was more against it because I was like, oh, I don't know, I just don't like the aesthetic. And then as I started to learn more about team history and I see these cards and I see these guys wearing them, I'm like, okay, I think I can deal with this because it's honoring the past, and
Yeah,
and that matters.
right. I mean, I think the original one that we just saw in that image is much better than the throwback that the Steelers wore, 10 years ago or whenever they did it. But, that was great, especially if they would have only done it a little bit more when the Killer Bees were
Ah,
were there. It would have been really maybe made more famous and sold more jerseys. But that's what it's all about, is that they want to
eh,
sell jerseys.
Well, and that's why I keep seeing these people that say, "Oh, do the all white uniforms or go back." I'm personally a fan of the 19. I believe it was they implemented it in what, like 1940, what we would call the original Steelers logo. It was part of their historic collection this year that they put out with jersey or shirts and hats and stuff. I
Hmm.
love that logo, and I only hope that we can see more of that in time with kind of the like the steel mills in the background and the guys up against it. That is the historic logo, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I've got a friend of mine, we co-wrote a book. We got a book on Pottsville Maroons coming out
Hmm.
this later this month. And we have an image because there's a letter where Art Rooney was voting to get Pottsville their championship back for 25. And he has it on the Steeler letterhead, and it's got that logo in it. Plus it's got Steely McBeam over on the side. So it's got both of them on the Steelers on Art Rooney's letterhead. So it's tremendous. I love the logo. It's busy, but it's a great logo.
Yeah, I mean anything to honor. I feel like Pittsburgh is very apt in their history in a lot of ways. So they're very ingrained in that steel town. They're very ingrained in that, kind of tough mentality. And like we've talked about, that dates back to the original football, the original professional football. So I think that's why that logo resonates with me more. Even not being a Pittsburgh guy, I think that's just very much the city and represents it the best.
Yeah, most definitely. Uh, but I love the tradition of the new logo too, and it only being on one side of the helmet. I just think it's different, it's unique, and it's got a great story too. Why it's only on one side. 'Cause but it's a Pittsburgh thing, and we'll own it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I'll pull another. I have another card here. I'll pull. This is one for the more modern fans. One that I don't think we probably see that much, and genuinely, I have only seen one time. So when I saw it, I bought it because I knew I had to have it. So it's a 2002 NFL Unsung Heroes of Aaron Smith,
Oh
and
yeah.
Aaron Smith only has two cards from 2002, and in the 20 odd years I've been collecting, I've seen this card one time, and I bought it. And
Hmm.
I said I have to have it because I've never seen it otherwise. A lot of people just kind of agree that his rookie is the 2003 tops total, which is a shared card, much like many of the tops totals were. But I still claim this one is kind of one of my favorites, just because of the scarcity of it. I'm sure there's other ones floating out there, but I've seen it one time.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's what they say. When you see it, you may not ever see it again. That's when you get it, because you might not find it again.
I'm glad I
So
did.
yeah,
Definitely
most
glad I
definitely.
did.
And Aaron was, I mean, he was tremendous. I don't think he gets enough credit for how good he was in those early 2000s. You know, the, I mean, the linebackers get all the glory, but it's those guys, and Casey Hampton gets a lot of
Hmm.
credit, rightfully he should. But, guys like, Kiesel coming in and Aaron Smith, those guys were doing the work and eating up blockers too, so those backers could be free and roam and you get the sacks and be the Blitzburg that they were.
Well, and I will say when it comes to cards in that way, I'm glad that these guys are on cards. I'm glad that there was the wherewithal to put these guys on cards because, like I said, it makes sense to me. Cards are a way to kind of own the game without spending a ton of money to do it. So guys like Aaron Smith on cards and Casey Hampton, I'm so glad that we have so many guys represented on those cards because you can build out with your cards like a little defense of the 2000s and be like, there, this is it, these are the guys. I'm so happy that that all of these guys are represented on cards, and even still today with the new Steelers, it's an ongoing thing, but it's fun to see all these guys represented in that little slab of cardboard.
Yeah, I had the opportunity a couple years ago. I've met John Kolb a couple of times, and the
Hmm.
first time I met him was down in Pittsburgh. We had a PFRA convention down there, and I took my dad. My dad, got me into being a Steelers fan. So I went and I took a couple cards. I took I took Kolb's rookie card down, and I took his second year card. So 72, 73, I think they were, and I took him down there, and Kolb signing his own cards just sat there and told stories like, "Oh boy, I haven't seen this in years," and these guys love it. I go up to a PFRE mini convention up in Buffalo every year. And the Buffalo guys, they get a lot of
Hmm.
former Bills, and they come in with their cards. Jeff Nixon comes in, and guys like that, Lou Pacone, the guys that you never really heard about, or because they didn't play a lot, they were like special teams or sat the bench. But you bring their card in there, their eyes light up, and go, "Oh God, I can remember that." It's been 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and some of these guys, but they love it too. They love it, and it just connects them with the fans and with the game, and it's there forever.
Well, and one of the guys, it's funny you mentioned that with those guys and making that connection. One of the guys that I've had the opportunity to connect with over the last few months is Doug Davis. And if you're not familiar, Doug is the son of former Steelers first round pick Art Davis, the 1956 draft. And just listening to him kind of tell his dad's stories, and my father played with him, my dad played here, did this, and just kind of listening to those stories is fascinating because, and I'm sure you know this too. Once these stories are done being told, they're gone forever. So it's kind of our job through the PRFA and cards and everything to continue to tell these stories, put pen to paper so people will remember them forever.
Yeah. God, when I had my Franklin book, we just celebrated down in Franklin. They had a big shindig, and John Kolb was at that too. But they ended up having a gentleman who played on the '57 Steelers, and he had his playbook, that
Oh wow.
Coach Buddy Parker gave him. And he brought the playbook in there. I was stupid. I should have took some pictures of it. I got some pictures with him, but I didn't take pictures of the inside of the book. And they were back then. They just got a blank like notebook, a little black book with notebook paper in it, and they had to draw out the plays as the coach was writing them up on the chalkboard. So it's in his own handwriting, which made it sort of personal. And he's telling, he's 90 some years old. He's telling the stories of, some of these things. It was just a great moment. But yeah, these guys, even though he only played for a couple years, they love to tell their stories, and it's a great thing.
Now, have you been to the Steelers Hall of Honor too?
In down in Heinz or Acrisure.
Yes.
Yeah, yes,
Okay,
yeah.
because I was gonna say when I first walked through there, that was kind of my first not my first introduction, but like to actually see the physical history of this. So when you mentioned the bumblebees earlier, my mind immediately goes to what I believe is Norm Greeny's bumblebee jersey. And when
Hmm.
you ask if I like them, I'm like, well, I like them a lot more now that I got to see an actual one. And you're like, oh, that's amazing that these guys wore these uniforms. And they had Jack Butler's playbook in there, and just seeing that memorabilia. I spent a lot of time in that room just because, like I said, a lot of guys want to run to the '70s, and I get it because
Hmm.
that's the known era. But there's so much history in that first 40 years too that deserves to be told, and seeing those playbooks, like you said, seeing those jerseys and hearing those stories, it's fascinating, and that's precisely why I want to do this project with cards, because it's a way to tell those stories, and people can pick up these things for relatively affordable prices.
Yeah, most definitely. But why don't you share with the listeners where they can find your social media?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm under 304 Collector Corner. The username on some of them is the Steelers Rookie Collection or the Pittsburgh Steelers Rookie Collection. I'm on Facebook, X, Blue Sky. I do a lot of stuff on Instagram and TikTok too. So any of those social platforms, pretty much anywhere that you all are, I am. So you can follow me on any of those places. Send me a message if you have stories or cards. I just love talking about cards and Steelers. So if you're a cards and Steelers person, I'll definitely cut it up with you.
All right, folks. And if you're driving, you can't write that information down. We'll have it in the show links, both on the YouTube channel and on the podcast notes. So you can get the links to hooked up with Ryan and his 304 Collector's Corner. Ryan, we really appreciate you coming on here and sharing the history and sharing your collection with us today and every day on your social media.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We're gonna keep pushing through. So thank you for having me.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.